a state where resiliency runs in our veins. No mountain is too high for us to summit.
A hopeful message. The governor's State of the State address coming as residents face anxieties about crime and concerns about affordability. We'll have reaction from both sides of the political aisle today. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. Governor Kathy Hochul this week delivering her State of the State address, looking to outline her legislative priorities heading into the new year. Now, while laying out her spending priorities for issues like education, mental health, and housing, the governor acknowledged that many residents are worried about an increase in violent crime, even though shootings and murders have declined by double digits. One proposal would focus on domestic violence prevention, another cracking down on unlicensed cannabis shops. The governor also is looking to address the persistent retail theft by funding dedicated response teams. Joining us now to give reaction to the governor's State of the State address, Assemblywoman Pat Fahey, Democrat representing the 109th District. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
For those who don't know where the 109th from the 122nd, where's the 109th? What does that encompass?
It's mostly Albany County. It's the city of Albany, Guilderland, and the town of New Scotland. Changed, used to have Bethlehem, changed a year ago.
Got you. What was your overall first take on the speech? I mean, she kind of dropped hints the week before, Kathy Hochul, what we were going to hear, but what did you think when you heard it?
Well, it wasn't, we knew we were walking into a $4 billion deficit this year, first time in a number of years that we got that shortfall. So it wasn't one of those awe-inspiring, we weren't on our feet that much with applause. But overall, and I was a little disappointed on some of the higher education issues because I'm higher education chair, so I was looking for a little funding there. But did appreciate her starting with crime, especially the retail theft, as well as the focus on mental health, because we know whether it's higher ed, K-12, hospitals, even just weight rooms, we know we have an issue on mental health and liked her focus on school-based clinics. So I thought some of that was good. We got a lot of work to do, healthcare, housing needed more. But we'll, overall, it laid out a bit of an agenda, even if it wasn't as dynamic as we have seen in past.
It's always more of a wish list, and then you got to get to the part of the budget and paying for it all. I wanted to circle back to the crime stuff. Is that more of a New York City thing, or are we starting to see it up here as well, upstate, where places are getting targeted for these thieves coming in and causing mayhem?
I live here in Albany. I've been to the Steam Garden, which is right on Central Avenue, not far from Camino Nuevo. And as you know, we've lost a lot of businesses along Central Avenue. But beyond even Central Avenue, we have seen multiple Stewart's shops close. We have seen Rite Aids close and more. So it is an issue, and a lot of it goes back to retail theft. It really escalated under COVID. It just hasn't dropped enough. And the organized part of it, I have heard stories of crates going out of Hannaford on Central Avenue. So yes, it's been a couple of years, but we still have a problem. And retailers, they have to tell their employees, don't stop anybody, because they have to protect their staff. So is it some of the nickel and dime issues? Yes. But there is an organized theft problem that comes in to our retailers, and we know some of it is even then being sold on the internet, which the governor mentioned, and that was absolutely right, as well as some bodegas.
Right. Circle back to education. Where specifically would you like to see more money? In the higher ed or right down in the grassroots? I know she wants to talk about literacy and getting some money in there to get kids reading earlier.
Yes, the science of reading is very important. We moved away from phonics. I fully support what she's talking about there, and that was a good press event she did beforehand. I am the higher education chair, but I'm also very proud that it took us quite a few years after the last recession, but we have fully paid down what you call foundation aid for K-12. It is time to focus on higher education. Birth rates are dropping across the country, yet we just attracted Micron, and we are the epicenter of the semiconductor industry. Micron, Syracuse, semiconductors here in Albany. We need an educated workforce. So we've got to up enrollments. The day before the State of the State, we had a wonderful press event that I jointly did with my higher ed chair, Senator Stavisky in the Senate. And we are launching a whole campaign to turn on the tap, tuition assistance. We know the middle class is saying higher ed is too unaffordable, it's too costly. So it's the #1 reason we see students are not going on to higher education. We can't keep attracting semiconductor industries if we don't educate the workforce. So launched a whole campaign on #TurnOnTheTap. We've got to help youth. We need to do more for youth. We know we're losing that youth vote. We know the middle class is discouraged. So that was where I thought we were missing something. We've got to tell youth what we're doing. And so even if it's not in the budget next week, we are going to turn around enrollment and really focus on not just making college affordable and providing that tuition assistance for lower income families. We've got to include middle income and really target youth.
Yeah, I wanted to hit on New York State is one of those states where too many people are leaving. The Times-Union, the local paper up here, did a lot of articles on it. And what surprised me a little bit, my first impulse is to think it must be taxes or the weather, people going to warmer climates. But they said it's also jobs. It's young people who are, it's not all these older people making crazy money who don't want to pay tax on it. It's a 23-year-old who says, I can't find what I need here. I got to go to another state.
Right, and that shouldn't be the case because we know Micron, a $100 billion investment that we wouldn't have had if we didn't have the semiconductor industry. Again, epicenter right here in Albany. It brought Micron to Syracuse. They've said it is our educated workforce. We've got to make sure we're getting every college student an internship and retaining them, because we know if they get an internship, they're overwhelmingly bound to end up staying in that company and staying right here in New York. So we don't want to educate them and lose them. We want to educate them and keep them. But in the meantime, we're seeing a drop-off nationally since COVID. Middle-class families are saying college isn't affordable. We've got to turn that around. We need these youth. We need them engaged, and we need to tell not just the low-income families, we need to tell our middle-income families, college is affordable. We're going to increase the tuition assistance plan, or the tuition assistance program. It launched 50 years. It's time to totally revitalize it.
Got you. We got about a minute and a half left. When you see Democrats controlling the governor's office, both houses, you think, well, it must be easy to get things passed. They all agree with each other. They all have a big D in front of their names. It's not that simple, is it?
That would be an understatement. And even as higher ed chair, we have our work cut out for us. Higher education also oversees the professions, which includes the healthcare professions. I live between Albany Med and St. Peter's. We have 2 of the longest ER waiting rooms in the entire state. Under higher education, I want to tackle those higher education professions. We need those nurses, so it's not enough to just educate them. We've got to make sure we are enabling them to practice at the top of their practice, but we also need more help. We can't lose any more Burdette centers. So healthcare is going to be huge. Housing, we've got to grow the pie, not just in New York City, throughout the state, but we also need those tenant protections. Rents have gone up across the state. Got to have those tenant protections, but we've got to grow housing. So I call it the 4 H's for me. It's housing, healthcare for me, higher education with the professions and students, growing the students, numbers of students. And then for me, the HEAT Act, we've got to still focus on our climate issues, including gas transition away from fossil fuels.
Well, Pat, we could talk for another hour about this, but we're out of time. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We'll circle back with you perhaps after we see the budget and we get more details on how they're going to pay for things and where things land.
Happy to be back.
Thank you. We are continuing to get our in-depth reaction analysis following this week's State of the State. When we come back, we'll hear from the State Senate Minority Leader on that speech and what its concerns are heading into the new session. And a quick reminder, if you have a comment or story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, which we all used to call Twitter, at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. Returning to our analysis of the state of the state, the governor's saying she's planning to address a shortage of affordable housing in New York. She's looking to increase the number of new housing units built in the new year.
Our plan for New York City includes 4 components of what I proposed last year. Restoring tax incentives to build housing that includes affordable housing, eliminating outdated restrictions on residential density that prevents the city from building more.
Joining us now to give additional reaction to the governor's State of the State address, Rob Ortt, the minority leader of the state Senate. Rob, thanks for coming on today.
John, thank you for having me.
What's your initial reaction, broad strokes, to what you heard in that speech?
You know, I thought my real initial reaction was just that it was kind of a small ball speech, right? You know, state of the states, a lot of times, you know, it's sort of the moment for bold ideas, for bold initiatives, sort of sweeping proposals. Some of them don't get through, but that's the chance for a governor to sort of lay out their vision for the state. And this just seemed to be, you know, we were talking about phonics and swimming pools, and that's fine. I mean, we need, you know, anyone that looks at our reading scores for our elementary school students knows that we need to do far better than we're doing. But it just seemed to me, while that's an important thing to maybe mention or focus on at some point, it just seemed like an interesting thing to lead about with your State of the State. There was a talk about the housing crisis, but not a real housing plan or a way to improve the lack of affordable housing here in the state of New York. And I think most shockingly to me was no mention really at all about the migrant crisis that has enveloped the city of New York, the state of New York, that has cost billions of dollars at this point, with certainly more to come, if I have read my colleagues correct. And the mayor of New York City was in the chamber. And of course, I think it was the day of her speech or the day after, might have been the night of the speech, we learned that a bunch of students in New York City, hardworking New York resident families, their students are sent home to learn remotely from their school to make a room for those who are here, illegal migrants, whatever term you want to use. They are not legal residents of New York. They're not legal citizens of New York. Many of them, we have no idea if their asylum cases will ever be, whether they be ruled legally seeking asylum. But here they are, more New Yorkers displaced, no doubt, no less school children, to make room for a crisis that has been created by policies here in New York State and New York City, sanctuary cities and sanctuary state policies, and no mention of that. No mention at all about the cost, no mention about what we're going to do to stem the flow, nothing. And I just thought that was a real missed opportunity, almost mind-blowingly so, by the governor on a major issue. And instead we're talking about swimming pools and phonics. And it just seemed like a missed opportunity for the governor.
Yeah, the swimming pool one, it did surprise a lot of people. It seemed so out of left field. What about you talked about retail crime and a special task force to deal with that. What was your take on that? Because when people walk in a store, especially in the city, and half the store seems to be locked up behind a counter, it's really gotten bad, hasn't it?
It's gotten terrible, and I think most people have become accustomed now, of course, seeing the videos on social media of people just coming in and ripping things off of shelves and stealing, goods from retail shops, whether it be a CVS or a drugstore, whatever it might be, with no consequence, seemingly, for these individuals. And so, look, at our conference, absolutely believes we need to address retail theft, but that's just one of the many crimes that are up. Assault, felony assault, car theft, retail, theft are all up. And they're up in part due to the policies that we have passed in Albany. Our conference has opposed, but the Democratic majorities have passed. Whether it's bail reform, discovery reform, less is more, clean slate, many of the policies that we continue even. There's more that some of my colleagues have advocated for. So it seemed ironic that we're creating a task force to address something that we have created. We have created the situation that has led to this increase in retail theft. And our answer is a task force, because the governor knows that the Senate Democrats lack the political will or even the political desire to make any changes that will result in less retail theft. And so we're going to create a task force, which is probably going to produce paper instead of results. They'll produce a report, but if the Democrats in the state Senate and the state Assembly aren't willing to act on those recommendations, then it really means nothing. So, our answer, Democrats' answer in New York State thus far when it comes to retail theft has been to lock up toothpaste, lock up baby formula, instead of those who are stealing the baby formula and toothpaste. And as long as that is the response, as long as that is the policy stance, that it's better to lock up the toothpaste than the person stealing it, we're not going to get anywhere when it comes to retail theft in this state.
We got less than 2 minutes left, but I want to talk about paying for all of this. There's going to be a lot of lobbyists outside that building. They're going to probably start, if they haven't started already, banging on the door saying, tax the rich, bring in more tax money to pay for a lot of these programs. We also saw on the other side a lot of people leaving New York State, not just because of taxes, but certainly that's part of it. What's the GOP response to that you just can't tax your way out of this?
You're not going to just be able to tax your way out of this. If we could, we would be the most affordable. If taxing people more led to a more affordable state, we would be the most affordable state. But we're the least affordable state. So that should tell you all you need to know, that just taxing more people, taxing employers, taxing wealthy people is not going to get us to where we need to be. We have to be able to come up with more creative solutions that I think rein in spending, control our spending, put more money in people's pockets. And that includes whether you're an employer, a single mom working 2 jobs, or a middle-class family. So we have very different answers to the affordability issue, but there's no question we have an affordability crisis in this state, and that is one of many reasons why people continue to leave this state.
Last 20 seconds, being in the minority, is there anything you can do, your party, or do they just look at you and say, run your mouths all you want, we don't have to do a single thing you say because we control both houses in the governor's office?
I'm sure some people look at me that way, and that's okay. But our conference represents millions and millions of New Yorkers, and we have an obligation to go to Albany to advocate for them, to obviously be part of this debate. I can assure you we will be part of this debate, and I think we do affect some of these policies. You look at last year, the governor wanted to ban all natural gas hookups for new builds, existing builds, and it was our opposition. It didn't stop it completely, but it limited it to new buildings, starting in the future. And so I do think we can have an impact on these debates, and I think it's important that we do. And we're going to continue to make sure we're advocating for our constituents and even New Yorkers that we don't represent across this great state.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. State Senator Rob Ortt, thanks for coming on today. We do appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
All right. New state office might be on the way for New York State. We'll hear from a future head of the Office of Service and Civic Engagement. And Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado, he's the guy. What that new office will do for you and New York State. By the way, if you have a comment or story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. We also find us on X, formerly known as Twitter. We're at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. As part of the State of the State, the governor announced a new state office, the Office of Service and Civic Engagement. Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado will oversee that new office. Jamie DeLine spoke with the Lieutenant Governor one-on-one on his new duties.
Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado describes his job as being the eyes and ears of the governor, traveling across the state, meeting with New Yorkers, and helping to inform the governor's decision-making. He also chairs the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit, and now he's taking on this additional role. Delgado says through service and civic engagement, people can give back while building connections and tolerance.
The pathways through this program will be diverse in nature, whether it's, attacking the problem of food insecurity, whether it's supporting our veterans when they come home, or making sure that folks who are dealing with substance abuse or mental health issues have the support that they need.
The new state office will be hiring a chief service officer who will be working with organizations across the state. The lieutenant governor says the office will also be partnering with SUNY and CUNY students, offering paid work opportunities and potentially college credits.
We have gotten to the point where I think as a culture we've diminished the value of service, and we've short-sighted it and shortchanged it, and I think it's incumbent upon us to elevate this work.
When asked how much money is being spent towards this new office, the governor's team says Hochul is unveiling her executive executive budget next week. Reporting in Albany, I'm Jamie DeLine.
Stick around. We'll be back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit. And a reminder, if you have a comment or story idea, please let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter. We're at WTEN. Finally, in Empire State Weekly, the State of the State address is when the governor unveils her priorities, but the executive budget will be when she will address how she intends to pay for all those proposals. After the State of the State, the Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay said that while he does support some of the proposals from the governor, quoting now, "The devil is in the details." Next week, we'll take a look to break down the executive budget by the numbers and bring you his expert analysis. For now, for all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray in Albany. We'll see you right here next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's a full schedule of our show on 10 television stations across the great state of New York.